The U.S. Coast Guard launched a search and rescue operation Monday to find the missing submersible vessel carrying 5 people to the Titanic shipwreck site. The search began after a Canadian ship alerted Sunday morning that it lost contact with the vessel led by OceanGate Expeditions, reported to be on a dive approximately 900 miles off of Cape Cod, Massachusetts.
The Titanic sub has been missing for over 2 days, and rescuers are racing against the clock. As the U.S. Guard predicts, it only has about 50 hours left before oxygen runs out. Now, according to reports, UK billionaire businessman Hamish Harding and one of Pakistan's wealthiest men, Shahzada Dawood, and his son Sulaiman Dawood are among those on board. Voyagers paid $250,000 to join the expedition, which dives 2 miles down to the Titanic.
So it's important to put into context that the depth of the Titanic is such, and the technology that is able to get you to the bottom of the ocean is such that very few people go. These kinds of expeditions are very rare and intrinsically very dangerous, that most of the ocean floor is unmapped, and we know less about it, and in some ways it's kind of equally dangerous as a trip to the moon. They are under an enormous amount of pressure. There's the potential for these kinds of ships to collapse in on themselves if they're not pressurized properly.
Yeah, it is very dangerous. And I was reading David Pogue, who's a science writer who went on one of these trips and was just describing it, and it just sounded, so there were like 5 days where they could do this dive where the vehicle would take him down. And there was bad weather on 2 of the days, so they couldn't do it. And then one of the times they went down, but they did not spot the Titanic. They couldn't find it because it's 14,000 feet down. You don't. It's really far out there. I mean, there was no guarantee you saw it. So finally, the 5th day, they actually did see it. Look, I don't think anyone should have too much false confidence here. This was there are a lot of risks associated. The loss of contact, the time that has elapsed. Yeah. It is going to be very difficult to find this vessel at all, let alone in a time frame, and the time frame might not even apply because there are 1,000 things that could have gone wrong to render this no longer a rescue mission. Obviously, we should try to find out what happened. But nobody should really be going into this with, miracles can take place, but...
Right. Well, there's 2 scenarios, right? That it could be on the bottom of the ocean floor, which in some ways might make it easier to find because maybe there's less motion. But even if it rises to the top, because assuming it still has integrity, then it is designed to be buoyant. It has to be pushed down. It's an air-filled capsule, so it will be buoyant, but that even if they are floating along the top of the surface of the water, it has to be found, and they cannot unseal themselves from the vessel on their own. They have to be found so that it can be unscrewed from the outside, such that it's still a race against the clock. Just because they're bobbing on the top of the ocean doesn't mean that they are safe or able to breathe.
Right. I mean, it's the ocean floor is so vast and so remote. I mean, the wreckage of the Titanic sat down there for, it was found in 1985. They knew roughly where it was, and it's a gigantic ship. And it still took 60 years to find it. I'm no expert. I have no idea. Best wishes and everything. People are working around the clock to find the vessel, but this sounds like a very difficult and frankly unlikely rescue. But this is interesting. International waters are not regulated. Some waters are regulated. The water around Antarctica, the Arctic is, but this is kind of no man's land.
Right.
So it's a private company that was doing these.
Private company, and apparently these vessels are vessels that go to the depth that this one goes to are unregulated. So it's when James Cameron went to the Titanic for the purposes of the film, he built his own submersible. This isn't, we're not in the realm of kind of military capable, Navy certified vessels. It's individuals who are kind of taking this risk upon themselves and constructing craft for their own specific purposes.
So when James Cameron went down, so then he surfaced and found out that 9/11 had happened.
Is that true?
Yeah. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a reminder. Wait, that's not right.
I just read it yesterday.
Because
it's got to be right.
Titanic came out in 1998.
I think he was doing. I think the dive was for additional footage for a new release of the.
Because I definitely remember
Talk while I Google this
grade.
to make sure I didn't read something.
Celine Dion. Yeah. So the Titanic. I had to ask this question because I wasn't even sure where the sinking of it happened. About 900 miles off of the coast of Boston, off of Cape Cod, 13,000 feet deep. This is below the level where we're kind of imagining a lot of sea life. Can't blame the orcas on this one. This is deeper than
the orcas.
It's deeper than, you know, a lot of what we conceive of when we're thinking about the ocean. This is literally largely uncharted territory. The craft went underwater on Sunday morning, and it lost contact with the surface vessel about an hour and 45 minutes later, according to the Coast Guard. So it wasn't very far into the trip at all before some kind of disaster struck.
So I've just verified Newsweek fact-checked this.
Yes.
True. The story often repeated on social media and movie blogs is true. James Cameron was in a submarine exploring the Titanic wreck the moment September 11th took place.
Okay, so it wasn't for the movie, but he was just taking.
I think it was for Ghosts of the Abyss, a subsequent documentary about Titanic. Yeah.
I see. So part of the discourse that's been happening about this online is some people who, because of schadenfreude or what have you, are being very critical of the choice to pay $250,000 to go on an expedition like this. The idea that there are people wealthy enough, obviously, as we mentioned, a couple of millionaires on the trip, people wealthy enough to do something like this for fun, something that's very dangerous, that puts all of the support infrastructure, the guides, et cetera, at risk as well for kind of a joyride, has led people to be perhaps less sympathetic and more critical of this. The search and rescue efforts and the money that entails is also drawing some scrutiny. What do you make of that?
It's dangerous, but skiing is dangerous. Whitewater rafting is dangerous. All sorts of activities that people do. You know, some small percentage of them.
But there's a scale difference here, Robby. No.
Look, if you want to spend your money on this kind of thing, I think that's your right. Would I want to spend my money if I had $250,000 lying around? I don't think you do either. When Rising really starts paying the big bucks, you and I are not taking our submarine trip to the bottom of the sea.
No,
together,
but the kind of person. So Harding, British businessman Hamish Harding, one of the mission specialists, is an adventurer who holds 3 Guinness World Records, including the longest duration at full ocean depth by a crewed vessel.
I mean, some people, that's.
In 2021, he and another ocean explorer dived to the lowest depth of the Mariana Trench. So he is no stranger to these kind of dives. It will be.
Yeah.
It'll be obviously a tragedy.
So Titanic is not in a trench, but it's basically as far down as you can be without being in a trench, which is very far down. So anyway, we'll continue to follow this story and hope for a positive update. More Rising after this.